the Palestinian people. I just find it now almost unbearable to watch the news or even to read about what's happening there, because it just seems to me deeply immoral.
If we're looking at the Fragility Forum, we are looking at conflicts that are all over the world. As an artist who is very engaged with the world, what particular situation that's fragile, involving conflict or violence, is in your mind right now, top of mind, that you want to share with us and your perspective of what is happening?
I think maybe that two things. I think the first would be the Palestinian people. I just find it now almost unbearable to watch the news or even to read about what's happening there, because it just seems to me deeply immoral that people who are barricaded in a very tiny area are just being bombarded. You know, human beings, civilians, children. I find it deeply, deeply affecting. It's just actually, and you know, I was reading yesterday about the writers who have died. And of course, everybody matters, but I remember thinking, so now even the people who will tell the story are gone. You know, the Palestinian writers who've died. And so that is very much on my mind, especially thinking about children. I find that the older I get, the more unbearable for me it is to think about a child being hurt. And the other thing I would say is, in Nigeria right now, there's just so much hunger. And obviously that's different from being bombarded, but there's something about not being able to eat that I also find deeply immoral, by which I mean that you have a government that has taken decisions that ultimately translates to people being so hungry that their dignity is gone. And that just utterly breaks my heart, and it's going on now in Nigeria. Actually, yesterday and today, people have been protesting. Yeah, and there's just something, you know, sometimes you just think, what the hell is going on with the world, right? There's just thinking about the way I tell a story. I think maybe I'm very interested in truth, but for me, truth is not, and I like to make a distinction between fact and truth. And so when I was writing Half of a Yellow Sun, for example, I would often say to people, I know the facts because I've read everything published about this war, but now I want the truths. I want the sort of textured things. And so I think telling stories about, you know, and often, yeah, I mean, I'm also very resistant to romanticizing things, even though there is a very strong streak in me that wants to romanticize. Because, you know, I love love. I'm actually just hope there's a part of me that's just hopelessly, why can't we all love each other? But then there's the other part of me that I sort of like to call the real politics side of me. And I want in my storytelling to merge both. And so, you know, in other words, if one writes about somebody who's done something really remarkable and good, it doesn't necessarily mean that that person is perfect, because we're all flawed. And I'm interested in that. And I think maybe that's what people, I hope maybe that's what people kind of respond to. I don't like purity. You know, I don't trust it. And I also don't trust perfection.
So I have seen storytellers who have gone around the world. They've spoken in displaced people's camps. They've encouraged young people to tell stories, to draw pictures. It's genuinely used as a tool.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, of course it is. I mean, therapists will tell you all the time that even your ability to tell yourself your own story is important, how you tell yourself your own story. Which is why I think there are many people all over the world who are told to look in a mirror and say, I am great. I mean, that doesn't work for me, but I appreciate that it works for some people. But no, I think it's also that we need to, even just the idea of going around asking people to tell stories and draw pictures, I think it's also a way of giving people dignity. And I think that's so important. Saying to people, what you've experienced matters. And what you've experienced isn't necessarily the same thing that somebody else has experienced. I mean, I'm really interested in, this is the other thing, just thinking about storytelling, in the sort of in multiple perspectives. I've found that people who read fiction, and I wish more people would, and I'm not just saying this because I write fiction, but I mean, there is that. I think if you read fiction, you start to know that your perspective is not the only perspective. And it's so important, right? That Igbo people say that you don't stand in one place to look at a masquerade. So people, you sort of stand in different places to see it in a sort of holistic way. And it's so important to think about conflict in that way as well. People understand things differently. People remember things differently, and so for me, I'm always really interested in that. If I read something in the news, I'm thinking I want to read about it from the other point of view. It really it helps you understand. And as a storyteller, even if you don't use those facts in the story itself, it informs the writing, right? It just brings a particular quality to the way that you tell the story.